Hi, Matt, how are you? Can you hear me? Got me, got it. Okay, there we go. So let me start all over again, guys. I just posted an update on what was happening over the next 72 hours. Thank you so much, Matt and Rick. You guys are the best. Do you understand why I adore the public that I work with and why you guys are amazing? I've got so much to update you on. Can't do it just quite yet, but soon enough. But yeah, this is going to be all about what's happening with NCAR, okay? So, as part of the American Meteorological Society, yes, hi Rick, and hi Matt, and thank you guys so much for doing that. I appreciate it. But as part of the American Meteorological Society, you guys know I'm a certified meteorologist. We have been updated that NCAR is essentially going to be dismantled. That's very alarming. And Rick, you, of course, you don't have to try. You don't have to try. Rick, you are in Colorado, and this happens to be with Boulder. It happens to do with Boulder, Colorado, and that's where we're talking about the NCAR situation. So NCAR has been a victim of being called a climate alarmist. It's not, they're not. And so they have gotten notice, they were put on notice last year, and certainly it's been snowballing into fruition, unfortunately, where the Office of Management and Budget for this administration has said that the White House would break up NCAR, citing its role in climate alarmism. That is really scary. Okay, because here's why. So one of the things that I've been really adept to doing when building platforms, weather platforms, companies, metrics, algorithms, anything in the space that I've been doing, I've been really focusing on the idea that one day there could be a monopoly of some sort in the weather space. So right now what we're seeing is that the National Weather Service made a surprising announcement, according to science.org, that it would change the computational heart of its premier forecast model, which divides the atmosphere into virtual parcels. And you guys at that point couldn't hear me because I had my microphone off. And these are the parcels they're talking about. Okay, you see how these all break up here? And even then they break up even smaller, right? Because just because we have, let's say like Nevada, Reno would be much different from Las Vegas, right? So you have different parcels, if you will. That's how they're referencing it. It would break it up, which divides the atmosphere into virtual parcels and solves the physical equations that describe how heat and moisture move around the globe. But it's not that. It's more that how the weather actually functions. The National Weather Service had always relied on its core, dynamical core, known as NOAA, but now would turn its core development at its longtime peer and sometimes rival NCAR. That's the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and they are brilliant meteorologists, brilliant atmospheric scientists, and they're based in Boulder, Colorado. Okay, so here is the deal. The concern I have for this, and I've been very clear with you guys all along. I was a climate change, not denier, but climate change neutral, in that whenever I spoke about climate change or global warming, I was always very aware at what it could do to the public when saying that. But over the past couple of years, especially as I've done my own data and my own modeling, I expect the first hurricane to impact Southern California sometime around 2025, 2026. Okay, that was my model solution. Now, you guys remember we had Hurricane Hillary impact us in 2023. Okay, so with that said, I calculated that we're about 2.5 years ahead of any of these weather anomalies, because remember, the reason we don't get hurricanes on the West Coast is because the sea surface temperatures are just too cool for that. But we've been seeing sea surface temperatures increase. And if you always want to know anything more about the sea surface temperatures on the West Coast, I'd advise you to go to Scripps, amazing school. My sister was invited to go there. She picked Caltech in the end, but Scripps is an amazing school, and they do great work when it comes to atmospheric science, marine biology, etc. Now, with this said, I find it really interesting that National Weather Service is now going to take over or have some part of the data that's coming through NCAR. And it's interesting because NCAR has been really gaining a lot of validation and support, as this article cites, from one part of the government. And now we're seeing that Russell Vought, the director of the management of budget, said that they're going to break it up due to climate alarmism. Now, I can honestly tell you this, as somebody who is not into climate alarmism, and again, I'm really mindful about what I say when it comes to climate change and global warming, all in all, because I just know how it can set people off. They do great work there. I'm not understanding this at all. The National Science Foundation, which funds NCAR, quickly followed OMB's directive soliciting bids to take over management of NCAR's various components for the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, or UCAR. UCAR is one of the it's one of the branches we study, or one of the platforms that we go into to study really, really great information, especially when it comes to things like hydrology. And the National Science Foundation's request will propose to take over NCAR Supercomputing Center in Cheyenne. National Science Foundation is expected to move 2 NCAR-operated research aircrafts to either NASA or NOAA. And this week, proposals are due to the National Science Foundation for reconfiguring home to most of its 800 scientists and engineers. For decades, they have researched how storms form, how seasonal weather can be predicted, and how the world will change with the warmer temperatures to come. Science has learned that, science.org, the site that we're on, has learned that one proposal is expected to come from the University of Oklahoma, which, wow, an academic powerhouse in severe weather research. Another will likely come from Linker, a NOAA contractor that wants to take over NCAR space weather research. Let's do our research on Linker. Hang on. Something just looks a little interesting about that. Okay, they're in Virginia. Premier science, engineering, technology company supporting some of the nation's most... Okay, who owns this? An employee-owned company. Okay. So it seems that Linker, sorry, will be taking over, will be bidding to take over the modeling. Wow. So let's look at numerical weather prediction. Okay. Linker supports improved global weather, ocean, and wave forecasts through advancing the global forecast system. So the GFS, Wave Watch 3, global ocean forecasts systems. We also support improved regional weather, hurricane air quality, and locally severe weather forecasts over the U.S. territories. Okay. Environmental analyses, including data simulation, real-time analysis. All right, let's see who the partners are quickly. Okay. So basically, it looks like they're going to break this up, and proposals are coming in for NCAR's data. Coveted data. Let's just say coveted data. I'm curious to see who's going to win this this bid, right? So this is going to be a request for proposal. So in the government, you are looking at things called an RFP or an RFQ. There are different requests, but this is an RFP, request for proposal. So proposal, I only learned this because I did bid for one, actually against the National Weather Service, and that went really interesting. I took my bid out. So it was very interesting. And it was for flooding, actually. That's what I went and discussed. My proposal was for a product for flooding, but I did pull it later on for reasons. So science has learned that one proposal is expected to come from the University of Oklahoma, an academic powerhouse in severe weather research. Another will likely come from Linker, a NOAA contractor that wants to take over NCAR space weather research. The details of the bid are sparse, but atmospheric scientists hope any new scheme will preserve NCAR's function and expertise. Whatever happens to NCAR, we cannot lose what we got out of it, says Alan Sales, president of the American Meteorological Society. We see a potential threat to one of the linchpins of the weather enterprise. University of Wyoming says it could readily accommodate NCAR's supercomputing capacity. The university already partners with NCAR to run the center, and the facility has room to grow. University of Wyoming wants to bring in private investors while still allowing NCAR scientists and other academics to have access. I hope that happens. I really hope that happens. You guys, it's really important to make sure that when we're keeping weather data, climate data, it's separated. This is kind of a checks and balance, if you will. We don't want the executive branch and we don't want the branches of the government to all just be murky, if you will, and the same goes with weather. And I think that's something that I'm getting a little bit more adept to and more aware of. So the university already partners with NCAR, and we anticipate, so University of Wyoming President Edward Seidel, we anticipate working with a broad set of partners to steward the supercomputing facility and help broaden on its use as National Science Foundation originally intended. Some worry that NSF could order UW to shift the supercomputing center's focus from climate to weather. One of the center's biggest projects was a collaboration that ran NCAR's flagship climate model. Wow, let me drop this story in for you guys to look at, okay? And I know I am on YouTube as well. See if I can get to my YouTube so I can actually post there as well. I'm going to post it here as well. This is an interesting story. So NOAA itself could propose to take on part of NCAR. NOAA Administrator Neil Jacobs has told researchers that President Donald Trump wants U.S. numerical weather prediction models to catch up to superior European models and to be top in the world within the next 3 years, an effort dubbed the NWP Moonshot, an internal document seen by Science. Jacobs, who worked at NCAR after his first stint running NOAA during Trump's first term, has long pushed for a weather moonshot. By adopting NCAR's modeling core, Jacobs hopes to spark closer collaboration between academic and government modelers, says Cliff Mass, a meteorologist at the University of Washington. There's too many American groups doing weather prediction and too many models splitting the community up. Mass has submitted his own proposal that would combine elements of NCAR and NOAA into a nonprofit. Well, all right, I'm going to leave that right there. This is interesting. Guys, what are my thoughts on this? I understand that there is a concern for having too many cooks in the kitchen or too many chefs in the kitchen. But when you start to monopolize or centralize weather like that, there can be a concern. So their concern is that weather has been decentralized, right? That this concept of weather functions in so many places. There's so much funding, like the National Science Foundation has NCAR and they work with UCAR. But the concern I have is that now, will this all be housed under NOAA? And then what type of checks and balance do you have? If the concern by the administration is that there is climate alarmism, if you will, by NCAR, then what could be the opposite, or what could be the other end of the spectrum? Like I said, I've never been somebody, I think a lot of you guys know this, who've been working with me here and updating me and you know, been on Team Erika Weather for the longest time. You guys know I don't propose, I'm not a proponent of climate change or global warming, but I do think this is a concern when we start to house everything in just one space. All right, so coming up, we're going to talk more about this merging, if you will, and what could happen with NCAR's data, because I think it's interesting. I'll read one last line and then I'll head off. Let's see here. Most of NCAR, including its climate research, could continue its work in such a center and still be housed at the Mesa Lab, while the center's nonprofit structure would allow U.S. companies to invest in the work. But OMB, which as we said is the budget balance, has been directing NSF, the National Science Foundation, on its actions with NCAR. Will make the final call on this and other ideas. It may face constraints, however, in its plans for the Mesa Lab. Colorado donated the land, and Boulder's residents voted to provide the water on the condition the land was used to carry out the purpose and functions of NCAR or NSF, a stipulation first noted by the Boulder Reporting Lab, a local news site. That condition could allow NSF to repurpose the building or transfer its management, but could limit its ability to sell it. And Congress could still thwart OMB. Colorado's senators discussed adding a provision to this year's spending bill for NSF that would have protected NCAR. although failed to do so. But last week, a Senate committee unanimously approved a bipartisan bill to improve weather forecasting that included an amendment to prevent National Science Foundation from transferring any NCAR assets until it completes a report to Congress on how the transfer might affect weather prediction. If the bill becomes law, far from guaranteed, it could buy time for lawmakers to place protection in its spending bills for the next fiscal year. All right, so this is basically, this is a sad-ish day, I think. This is a sad-ish time because what we don't want is all of the data to be housed in one location. And I think this is the concern we have here. Hi, everybody that's joined. Wow, thank you so much. I'm going to pause right here. Rick, I'm going to pause right here, but I will be back in just a little bit. I'm going to start to slice and dice all these and post these. But this is a very interesting situation for us as we really start to understand what's happening with climate anomalies, weather anomalies, especially as we enter hurricane season. I, for one, can't say where exactly I stand for many reasons, but I do feel that data, while it just can't be completely decentralized, weather is a business. Let me just be really clear to you guys. Weather is big money. It's big money. Big money. It's a business. This is why I wanted to build my own products. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a meteorologist, but I'm also somebody who wants to make a living, right? And there is big money to be made in weather. And now that we start to see this, I think as we've started to see what happened with North Carolina, and as we start to see what's happening with hurricane season, we're starting to understand that weather makes money. Weather makes a lot of money, okay? Whether you add the word climate or global warming or whatever you want, weather in and of itself, a weather forecast is big business. Shipping lanes, travel, anything of that nature, weather is big business. So somebody clearly understands that now. It's a little saddish for me because this is big money. So who knows where this is going to end up. We don't know where NCAR is going to end up. Remember, it's based in Boulder, Colorado. There is certainly some type of checks and balance in this situation, and they are kind of a soft competitor to NOAA, and so we don't know. This is a very interesting update, very interesting information, and I simply addressed it because the president of the American Meteorological Society did address it earlier, so I just thought this would be interesting to address this. So who knows where this is going to end up, but we'll be back with more information. I'm meteorologist Erika Martine. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful afternoon. Heart Medicine Angie, Charlie Richards, 8 Just to Kill, 85, weather language. Yeah, right? Oh my gosh. And Rick, thank you so much. And Matt, thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for letting me know my mic was not on. And I think I do that every time I'm like prepping, right? Whenever I don't have my director, I just kind of start to, putz around here, and I just didn't hit the right button there. But thank you guys so much. I'll be on in just a little bit, probably another 2 hours. I'm going to go over some of this data, and then we'll talk again about what we talked about earlier. And that was, of course, what was happening with the weather, because we're definitely getting a major change here in the weather department, as you can see, as we track high wind warnings, wind alerts, red flag warnings, and some snow moving into the Great Lakes region as a clipper dives on down, and there's enough cold air into place to change that precip over from rain to snow. I'm meteorologist Erika Martine. I'll see you guys in just a little bit. Be sure you have your alerts on and follow me at Erika Martine Weather. Make sure you have your alerts going off for YouTube so that you guys can get alerts when I go live and we post across our social platforms. All right. Bye, guys.